I'm gonna keep it 100, I don't know how to easily explain how much I love this game. And that's mainly because I find it hard to explain the why first. Because Arknights Endfield is part gacha game, part factory simulator, part action exploration game, part card battler. That'll make more sense later, don't worry about it now. But it's a game that takes so many different ingredients, throws it into a pot, and when you would expect some genuine horror show to come out of it, some Lovecraftian-esque abomination to stain your eyes, it instead is one of the most unique gachas I've played. I don't know how they've done it, because if you were to sit somebody down and ask them if they wanted to play a factory sim action combat gacha game, the answer would probably be no. Because the stereotype of factory games is that you need a PhD to optimize your gameplay, and the stereotype of gacha games is that you need to max out a credit card to optimize your gameplay. So at that point you must be thinking, who the hell is this game meant to appeal to? And the answer is, this is coming from the company that had the first collab in its gacha game be Rainbow Six Siege. I don't think they care about a target audience, I think they just do what they want to, honestly. Now in case you don't know, Endfield is not out as of now. Currently we're in the game's second closed beta. Thankfully it seems like an open beta is coming out sometime soon, but we don't know when. However, the game is dropping in early 2026. Now, I was able to get access for this closed beta, so I wanted to make this video to glaze the game where it deserves to be, say why it works so well, and give a criticism on the aspects I dislike. Because the main purpose of these beta tests is for the game to improve. At this point, I played it 3 times. The technical test, beta test 1, and now this one. And from each and every test, it has improved drastically because of all the feedback. So I want to give out mine. But before getting to any of that, I am happy to say that this video is actually sponsored by Arknights Endfield, which is why if you want to pre-register for the game, you can find a link to do that in the description. But with that out of the way, let's talk about how the game mixes the factory sim aspects and the combat aspects in it. So the game is intricately tied with the factory builder aspect of it. Endfield is not, here's a gacha game with a world to explore and action combat with a cool little base builder mini game. It's a game which has all of what you would expect, but ties it back into the factory. Like if you want to go out and explore, oh, yeah, here's some ore veins, let's set up electric miners. You're getting your ass beat by the enemies in combat? Okay, let's get some gear. How do we do that? Use Sandy to farm drops? Hell no, get that shit out of my goddamn face. You go into your factory, you pop down some production lines, you make these little things, you turn it into gear sets. A rift of enemies is whooping you? Surround it with towers that dispense high caliber rounds as quickly as possible into the enemy's cranium and sit back as you watch them do all the work. You need some healing? Get a healer. But if you don't want to do that, hop into the base, make some medicine, and you can use it in combat. Now, here's the thing I think a lot of people would get hung up on. I feel that with an explanation like that, some people are going to be a bit overwhelmed, thinking that the base system is way too complex, but I'm just going to say it, it's not. For a point of reference, the only base building game I've played so far is Satisfactory, and I got up to nuclear fusion in that before me and my friends didn't have time to play it more. Now the Steam guide that gives out an advanced explanation on how to make a nuclear power plant is about 3,000 words long, so half of this entire video script. And that's just to get power for your base. You know how you get power in Endfield? You make a battery, you put it in a thermal bank. That's it. If you want to see the recipe for the most complicated battery we got now, this is a chart for how to make it. All you really got to do is just place down what it asks you to, and you're good. I honestly believe that the game does a good enough job of guiding you through the process of how to build stuff that 99% of players aren't going to be walled by the factory gameplay. But if you want challenge from it, then you can get into hyper optimization and using all space you have to make your factory as good as it can be. And if you don't want to deal with that, then there's blueprints that you can share between players, so you can get a optimal build from that. Me personally, I probably won't, because end of the day, I just like building the factory. Some of my builds look nice, some are well, I mean, it works. But whenever I had time to optimize the base, I was just happy. And what I mean by time to optimize the base is part of how the main story progresses. Put simply, they drop you into an area, you get a factory. You go to a new area, you might just get a sub-factory. Eventually, the story hits a place where you gotta get your player level up to progress, and that's when you explore around, do up side quests, hit new areas, build a base. Pretty quickly, you'll hit the level cap you need to, and then you move on to repeat it again. You progress, slight wall, you backtrack, optimize, unlock new stuff, progress, repeat. And that loop is pretty good. It doesn't make it so you're forced into the factory mines for 10 hours straight, or you barely see it as you go through the world. It's a perfect middle balance between the two systems as you clear the story of the game. And on that note, let's talk about the story. So the game is called Arknights Endfield, but you do not need to play Arknights to understand it. Playing Arknights and knowing its story will definitely have the story in Endfield hit more at times, but for the most part, it's not needed. I wouldn't say it's to the point like a Final Fantasy game where you can really just jump into any mainline game and there's pretty much nothing lost if you didn't play the other ones, but it really stands on its own and Arknights is the cherry on top. Now, if you want to know the basics of the connection between these two games, without me diving into Arknights spoilers, it's that on Terra, the planet Arknights takes place in, there is a giant Aether Gate up north in the Infi ice fields. Don't question why it's there. During when Arknights takes place, the Aether Gate doesn't work, but some couple of hundred years into the future, the people of Terra are able to get it functioning and take it, which brings them to Talos 2, a different planet, and that is where Endfield takes place. 152 years from that. Yeah, Talos 2 isn't exactly a baby planet. People have built up civilization on it, but they're still struggling to survive, well, what feels like essentially Australia if it was an entire planet. Which is where you, the administrator, comes in to help them. Throughout the history of Talos 2, you've been awakened from the rock that magically changes your gender, Happy Pride Month, to save it in its time of need. However, this recent time you've woken up from it, you lost your memories and you got amnesia now. Welcome, hello, this is a gacha game in case you forgot. Of course you're gonna have amnesia. But about 0.3 seconds after waking up, you gotta go out and save Valley 4 from a bunch of problems, but the main one is the Landbreakers. Though, Landbreakers is a general term that encompasses 3 different factions. To be more specific, you gotta deal with the Bone Crushers. Now, I don't want to explain bar for bar how the main plot goes because that'd be boring and it'd take too long, but to explain it briefly, you drop into the hub area and help them after an anchor fell on their base. Anchors are what spawn Agaloy, think basically monsters. Then afterwards you go into the Valley Pass and fight against the Bone Crushers that are setting up shop there. After you go to the quarry, optional area, then a big explosion happens at the power plant, so you gotta go and find what's up, which leads you to going through a science park and an old mining colony that has been dealing with a rough time due to the Agaloys and the 3 damn anchors, which are their next door neighbors. And at the end of it, you fight against the leader of the Bone Crushers, Nefereth. That is the basics of the story of Valley 4, and from here I got 2 things. A lot of hope with the story from the plot reveals we've seen, and criticisms of this arc. Now my speculation for what the plot might dip its toes into would take really long, so I might just save that for its own video where I talk in depth about the connections between Arknights and Endfield, as I discuss what the plot could go into. So instead, I'm going to get into my criticisms for the first chapter of the game, Valley 4. And the most glaring criticism I have is that the Bone Crushers are fucking troglodytes. I'm sorry, I couldn't think of a nicer way to say it. I just can't take them seriously. Throughout Arc 1, the Bone Crushers are seen as the big bad enemy. They're the driving force of the conflict with the area, but I wasn't able to take them seriously because they just seem generic as hell. Like, take OG Arknights. Even though the chapters before 5 weren't the best, you can pretty quickly understand why Reunion is doing what they're doing, both from what the higher-ups were saying, but even from the grunts. You'd have moments where unnamed Reunion grunts would talk about the treatment of infected in the world and why they've snapped and are lashing out against it. Not to the point of agreeing with them, but they would explain the state of the world and how they became less than human after being infected, and my reaction to them was just, well, shit, I could understand why you decided to join Reunion. Even the grunts would have interesting dialogue which made me actually interested about them and Reunion, elevating it beyond a simple idea of Reunion is a group of bad people so we should hate them. Now, this isn't to say that every time a Reunion grunt would speak, it would sound like you're listening to the reincarnation of Socrates, but it makes them feel human. Now, I'm not saying Endfield needs to take after Arknights and make the Bone Crushers sympathetic villains or whatever, especially because I feel like if we run this same plot dynamic back for a second time, it'd be overdone. But I want the Bone Crushers to have something for me to take them seriously. Like, Arknights starts off with Reunion fighting you as they take control of an entire nomadic platform, or a farm on you, and then make you join forces with a city to help fight against them. Granted, city doesn't do terribly much, but at least you try. It establishes them as a threat, but the times we see the Bone Crushers in Endfield be a threat, it's mainly against scientists, sick people, and power plant workers. It doesn't feel like they toppled something incredibly strong, so we need to take them seriously. It feels like they walked into Valley 4 on a Smurf account. So to me, their means of fighting aren't interesting, and the people they've beaten up are people you wouldn't really expect to see win a war or something. There's nothing about the Bone Crushers that makes me feel like they are a compelling force. They just feel like a group of generic bad guys that I have a hard time caring about. Like, the story makes a point that Nefereth became their new leader and it's a big deal. Then I think it becomes obvious pretty quickly that she's more than likely just using them for her own goals. I really don't think the end game of the story is gonna focus on the Bone Crushers. Right now they just seem like pawns. But the Bone Crushers being so underdeveloped and barely standing on their own as an interesting force subtracts from viewing Nefereth as a smart villain for manipulating them. Now, the things that she does are still important, like opening up an aether portal over the power plant. Yeah, it definitely seems like we should fix that. But when I'm in the story and dealing with the threat of the Bone Crushers without Nefereth, I just sit there and think like, man, anyone that could fight could do this, really. I mean, I'm not really needed. They're just not an interesting force outside of Nefereth. Then, for comparison, there's a threat in Wuling. It's a city built upon, well, imagine it's like Pompeii, not the enemy, the city. They built the city in a place where a lot of blight activity is, and it stands as a beacon of what humanity can accomplish in this new world. But the situation is pretty dire. Their main means of fighting against the blight takes forever to make, and according to their simulations, they have maybe 3 months until they're screwed. And the blight is an actually scary force. If you stand in it, you die. Just straight up death. It's a force of nature. So you go there to help shore up their defenses against the blight and use the factory to make the materials they need to fight against it. The situation is very threatening and the inmate's role is clearly conveyed. It doesn't just feel like anyone with a weapon can help here. So it was a lot more engaging as a start and reason for going there where Valley 4 wasn't. And the fix I would suggest is just making more moments where the Bone Crushers feel like an actual threat. You make them stand out more on their own without needing Nefereth there. It's all in all a little thing, but I think it would make Chapter 1 much more engaging in the stages before the Origin load spring. I think at that point it starts to pick up, mainly because you deal with Nefereth as the main threat instead of the Bone Crushers on their own, but it also takes around 15-ish hours to get there, but from there it keeps getting better as you go into Wuling. And then I think Wuling is pretty damn good. We only got a bit of it in the beta, but I've loved what I've seen so far of it. Though the story before Origin load spring being boring, mixed with pretty much most of the side quests in the game also not being the most interesting, will probably make new players think the story is bad and just skip through it, with the technobabble and all that not really helping them rough out 15 hours before it gets engaging. Now, this is minus the direct beginning of the story. I think that's good. It just takes a dip after saving the hub to the beginning of the Origin load spring, which is about like 13-ish hours of gameplay in between. But even though that segment of the story is not the most interesting, and I feel like it does a bit of a disservice to the overall plot of the story, I really gotta compliment how well animated the cutscenes are. The characters are very expressive. Most cutscenes don't just feel like everyone's standing around yapping with little to no movement. Then the action ones take this a step further and just fucking flex their quality. And the animations are helped with how detailed the models are. I don't know any big technical terms to explain it, so I'm just gonna say like, yeah, they look really damn good. Hell, if you want an example of the detail, the way the rain affects the clothes changes based on the material. If it's metal, leather, or polyester, I'm assuming this is polyester, the rain doesn't soak into it or just makes the clothes a shade darker as the only thing to indicate they're wet. That's not how it works in real life, so instead the rain stays on the material as droplets. But for anything that's cloth or wood gets soaked, it sinks into it and changes the color. It's such a little thing, but it showcases the attention to detail in the game. And if you pull out the camera and zoom into the models, you can see the little stitches and patterns of the clothes. Like, just from looking at this, I can fully imagine how every material here feels. The level of detail is insane. But now let's talk about what's probably the most important part of the game, the combat. I think this shit is genuine gas. Let me explain. There's an old Bungie quote that games are 30 seconds of fun happening over and over. And what you gotta do is stretch that out to an entire game. And honestly, I think that's still true to this day. Games have their combat system as a core part of it, and it needs to provide enough for you to not get sick and tired of it. And there's two big proponents of the combat system: what you, the player, need to or can do, so the inputs, and the challenge the game gives you. Take for example Elden Ring. The inputs on your side are incredibly basic. You got 3 buttons to swing your weapon, a roll, some items, and a heal. This system in a closed environment is nothing. There's no huge variety of it. So what do they do to make it interesting? Well, it's hard as fuck. The enemies you're fighting are difficult, so you need to learn them and play against what they're doing. The inputs on your side are simple, but the game changes itself due to the enemy you're fighting, or the area you're going through. Now the second part of that, the area you're going through, gacha games struggle with heavily. Because they're live service, it takes time to make a new area for players to fuck around in, and they need to constantly give out content to keep people actually playing. So they need to make it so what the player is inputting has a lot of depth so that 30 seconds of fun can stay healthy in repetitive content. Now Arknights is a master of this. The amount of characters and strategy you can implement in a stage is pretty much endless, not to mention every new event having its own gimmick for you to play with, and the 3 other game modes in it that have their own gimmick beyond that. But it's easier to do because the game isn't a 3D gacha. Making new content doesn't take anywhere near as long. So when you look at 3D gachas, it becomes a lot more difficult to keep that 30 seconds of fun. Wuwa keeps it by having character combos not be easy as shit and the enemies you fight against being actually difficult. Genshin keeps it, even though the enemies and the player inputs are rather basic, by trying to push out more team building of the game and make you dive into that system to beat the content. Honkai Star Rail keeps it by giving every newly developed enemy another 500 million added onto its HP pool. Okay, I'm joking, you'll call off the hit squad. But what does Endfield do to keep this 30 seconds of fun? And the answer is complexity and kits. So every character has a basic attack, skill, combo skill, and ultimate. Combo skills require a conditional to be activated, and skills usually have some conditional that makes them stronger. So the optimal way to play is to ensure that your team is able to have all of the characters in it to fulfill all of their conditionals. Now, some of the ways to do it are to inflict physical statics or elemental statuses. Take for example Helliger. I know he's called that, but I don't know how the fuck to pronounce that, so don't expect me to. I'm calling him Helliger. So his skill applies breach to the enemy. What it does is consume all vulnerability stacks against that enemy. Then after that, he can use his combo skill that gets buffed based on how many stacks of vulnerable you consumed. So how do you inflict vulnerable? Well, as of now, the main way, to keep it simple, is lift and knockdown. You use these, it gives them vulnerable stacks. At its basics, you use your skills, those give you resources, you execute stuff based on those resources. Now, let's look at the elemental side of things with more added on, Suitor. So, like vulnerable stacks, elements have their own stacks, also up to 4, and reactions trigger based on what element was placed last on an enemy. So if I put heat infliction on an enemy and then put nature infliction on them, they become corrosive. If I swap that so nature is first, then I put fire on them, they become combusted. And in Suitor's case, how she interacts with elements is that she wants the enemy to have as much heat infliction as possible. Then she consumes it with her final basic attack, and when she's consumed 4, you can see this on the little thing right here, her skill gets buffed and gives her ult energy. So this is probably looking pretty simple, but if you played card games with a shit ton of conditionals, you're probably connecting the dots right now. Because what I just described were 2 characters in total. You got 4 on a team. Now let's look through them in their own teams. On Suitor's we got her, Wolfguard, Angelina, and Ember. On Helliger's we got him, Leifeng, Chen, and Ember again. So let's look at what I try to do with Suitor to be optimal, and this is far from optimal. I mean, I've only had a few days with this current iteration of the combat system. But the enemy spawn in and I immediately group them up with Angelina's skill. Now right after that I pop Wolfguard's skill, because Angie's skill takes a bit before it applies nature infliction, so I use Wolfguard's skill to put heat infliction on the enemy. Now this fulfills the conditional of Wolfguard's combo skill. You just need an infliction on an enemy. Then I use his combo skill to apply heat infliction in an AoE to all the grouped up enemies. Then I hit with Suitor's final basic attack and consume all the heat infliction to buff up her next skill. And after that I use Wolfguard's ultimate skill. This fulfills 3 conditionals: Suitor's, Wolfguard's, which you get again after using his ult at pot 5, and Angie's. Now at this point, the enemy is a sacrificial lamb. Combustion is forcibly put on all of them because of Wolfguard, and Suitor's combo skill hits all enemies with combustion, so they get AoE to hell. Then after that, Wolfguard's skill, so I get more heat infliction to consume, and Angelina's skill just because it does damage. At this point, all the fodder is dead, so I'm just mopping up this enemy till the elite comes in, which to fight against an elite, here's Helliger's team mopping one up. For the sake of time, I'm going to start with the combo that killed it. Now, I got 4 stacks of vulnerable on it, and I consume them all with Helliger's skill. This makes it so I could use his combo skill and restore enough SP to unleash a biblical level ass whooping. So I'll pop Leifeng's ult and then Chen's ult. Now Leifeng's ult has 2 hits in it, and they both apply knockdown, so in total it gives 2 stacks of vulnerable. The first stack triggers Chen's combo skill, then in between the hits I pop Leifeng's skill, but right after I pop Helliger's ult. Now this makes it so that with every physical status given to an enemy, a shield guard hits them, recovers SP, and when the 5th physical status is applied, they all come in and dunk on them. And I want that shit to be as aura farmy as possible. So as you can see on screen, I do not know what is happening on screen, but what I did was pop the skill before the second hit of Leifeng's ult and his skill hit. So those both apply a stack of vulnerable themselves, and 2 extra shield guards come in to hit the elite. Then I pop Chen's combo skill to hit the elite with another stack as well, another shield guard coming in too. I use the final strike on Helliger to pop the combo skill of Leifeng. Now I tactically get hit here to use Ember's combo skill. Yes, you heard that right, tactically get hit. I did not miss my dodge, this was calculated. So at this point, the enemy has been hit with 4 shield guards. The next hit is where I get to aura farm. So I pop Ember's ult for damage and then I get hit. Now again, this was me tactically getting my shit rocked. Because even though Ember's combo skill is on cooldown so I can't use it, I decided to get hit here so I can have Helliger look like he's in the opening cutscene of a Kingdom Hearts game. Not because I missed my dodge, because he was feeling simple and clean. But the enemy gets staggered, so I use a finisher for some damage and then I pop his skill to consume all of the vulnerable stacks and give me back SP. And then the fucking squad pulls up with the people's elbow of Ursus. Then I get his combo skill to finish things off. That is the best example I can give of the combat system. If you want brain dead action gameplay, you can mash buttons and pop combo skills whenever, but if you really want to optimize what you're capable of doing, these systems become so complex. And this is with Riley's characters. We all know how the kits and gachas have the year ones being like a sentence explaining what they can do, and later ones having 2 fucking pages of explanation. You got 4 characters all with their own conditionals that you're constantly popping out, with weapons that have their own conditionals and armor that has its own as well. And all of this culminates into a combat system that is a fast-paced strategy one. That is how it feels to me. And the best part about it is that the game doesn't have simple rotations. In some games, you can spreadsheet out what buttons to press, and most combat encounters will be you using those same buttons over and over. But Endfield encourages you to know why you're using what you're using. I have an opener that feels the same, but let's say I'm using Suther's team and a new enemy spawns in. Well, I want to get heat infliction on it to enhance her skills, so should I immediately pop Wolfguard's skill? No, I should wait, because his combo skill is on cooldown. So if I wait a bit, I get 2 stacks on the enemy to consume. So many factors change what is optimal for your rotation, like what's on cooldown, what the enemy has inflicted on it, where the enemies are, to where it doesn't feel like you are constantly popping these same buttons over and over, but instead constantly weighing what you have to maximize your damage. And again, if you're intimidated by this, you don't need to be 100% optimal. Having a good opener is fine enough. It's like the base system. The skill floor is pretty damn low. It's hard to do terrible, but the skill ceiling is sky high and there's a lot to optimize for the people who want to. I believe it was Lowlight, or at least someone at Hypergriff talking about the combat system, that they wanted it to feel like a card battler, and I think they achieved that level of depth while still keeping the game as a 3D action one. Now, I will also keep it 100 with you. I heard this quote in stream chat, so I don't know if it's actually real, but it sounds good for my explanation, so I'll go with it's real. But I really hope this segment explained why I find it so good. I'm very impressed with what they made. Every part of the game meshes so well together, and it's able to have optimization in how you play it that isn't at risk of hurting the game for more casual players. But I would say there is something else I think does hurt this game in its current state, which would be the gacha. So the current system is this: 0.8% chance for a 6-star, 8% for a 5-star, rest is 4 stars. No weapons on the banner because there isn't a weapon banner you spend a gacha currency on. More on that later. So Endfield does a similar system to Hoyoverse, where there is a basic banner and operators outside of that pool are in limited banners. But the system's a bit different, to where the limited character exists in the pool of operators to get for 2 banners after theirs. For their banner, they're rate up to 50%, and the others they're a character to get in the pool of off rates. And the game doesn't have the regular guarantee of if you get an off rate, your next character is gonna be rate up. Instead, they make it so if you don't get the rate up in 119 pulls, your next pull at 120 is going to be the rate up character guaranteed. Now, after getting that guarantee, there is still no system to where if you lose a 50-50, your next is rate up. So to get potentials, you get 1 guaranteed after 240 pulls total on the banner. It's 1 potential, so it means that if you never get rate up outside of the guarantee, you are going to get potential 1 for the character at 240 pulls. But if you get lucky and get 4 copies of the character before that, when you hit 240 potential, you will have max spot. This doesn't go away if you hit the character. It stays, and you get a token for every 240 pulls you do. And soft pity exists at 65 pulls, where every pull past that adds 5% onto your chance to get a 6-star. So first is 5.8, then 10.8, etc, etc. Now, all of that is, I'm not gonna lie, a little complicated. That shit took 300 words to describe, but I got a problem with it. It's that after that 120 guarantee, there's no way to start building pity for the next banner. Rolls after that 120 guarantee do not carry over to the next banner's 120. So there's no way to effectively build guarantee for a banner because the game doesn't have that 50-50 pity system. After 60 rolls on the current limited banner, you do get a 10 pull for the next limited that expires after that's done, but that's it. And here's the thing. This system as it is, for a banner itself, I would say is pretty good. It's not easy to describe, but I think it works well. No 50-50 sucks, but the guarantee at 120 ensures that, compared to a system like damn near every other 3D gacha has, you will get the character in less rolls if you have to go to guarantee. If you're unlucky as shit, objectively, this banner system helps you. Though still overall, I don't like characters not going to the basic banner, but that's a small problem compared to the bigger one. Rolling after getting the character. I personally think 240 pulls needed per guarantee token is too much. Now, I do want to be clear that the potential in this game is not Genshin levels of like it makes the character a different character. It's little buffs that aren't as meaningless as the ones in Arknights, but are not terribly insane either. But an idea I want to throw out there is instead, think about this. What if at 120 or 150 or something that's just lower than 240 pulls, after you get the rate up 6-star, you are guaranteed to get them in a roll again? Now there's a reason I specify in a role compared to getting a token, and that is because of the weapon system. So after getting a unit, you get arsenal tickets based on the rarity of the unit, 2,000 for a 6-star, 200 for a 5-star, 20 for a 4-star. And a 10 pull on the weapon gacha is 1,980 tickets. You can't do single pulls on it, only 10 pulls. If you don't get a 6-star weapon in 3 pulls, the 4th will have one, and there is only a 25% chance of the weapon being the rate up one. To guarantee the rate up weapon, you need to do 8 10 pulls, and that is where I got a problem. Getting the weapon is actually pretty damn difficult, because aside from getting tickets from rolling, the only sources I know exist in this build of the game is getting them at the credit store, really low amount, on the paid only tier of the battle pass, buying packs, or by rolling. So basically, if you don't pay, the only big source to get them from is the gacha. So enter in my case that shows why I dislike this current system. I got lucky and got Suthor on my 16th pull. Now, I really want to use her weapon because it's strong as hell for her. So how do I get tickets? Well, I gotta roll. What banners can I roll on? Suthor's and the basic banner. That's it. I know I'm not going to reach her guaranteed pot because that is so many rolls, so that means every pull I do on this banner is building towards nothing except for that 110 pull I can do on the next limited. So if I want to get her weapon, I need to, essentially, throw away so many of my pulls on a banner that has no guarantees. So I'm screwing myself over for the next limited banner because none of this builds towards that guarantee aside from that 110 pull. But if I want to get her weapon, it's this or the basic banner. And I need to roll now for the weapon because when the banner's over, so is the weapon banner. Until who knows how long into the future when it comes back again. These two systems do not work well together. The banner system rewards you for not pulling until you have enough for guarantee, but after getting the character, you will need to essentially waste rolls to get their weapon. So it comes to my case, where I got Suthor in 16 pulls, but I wasn't able to get her weapon, because I had to go to guarantee, until I got enough arsenal tickets after 204 pulls. Now that's in general, basic banner and beginner banner included. For just Suthor's, I did 91 pulls. But this is just not it. I know all of those 75 pulls after getting her were thrown away because I now can't use them for guarantee on the next limited. If you get the character early, you're still going to have to spend gacha currency on their banner or the basic banner to get their weapon. It feels at odds. The game gives a pretty early guarantee, but since pots require 240 pulls in total to guarantee, most people aside from whales aren't gonna hit those. So after getting the character, you're throwing pulls into the wind to get their weapon. There's 4 ways I see to fix this. One is to make it so you can get arsenal tickets from more sources for free. This is the one I'd prefer they just do. 2 is for the change I said prior, where after getting the character, you are guaranteed a copy of them and let's say 120 pulls. They don't need to do that amount, but let's just say it is. Now that would mean you could reasonably hit that if you get the character early or if you have average luck, and if you do, it means that you get a 10 pull from the weapon banner. 3 is to make it so the game has a standard 50-50 system that carries over between banners. And 4 is to give us a lot of basic banner pulls in the game because those give arsenal tickets without messing up the pull economy of limited banners. Me personally, I prefer all the changes except for 3 because I think the current system is a little better than the regular 50-50 one. But I got a big preference for 1 and a little bit of 2. Maybe just make it so you can get arsenal tickets from other sources and the potentials are at like 200 total pulls or something. I don't know. I just think in this current system, the character banner works on its own and the weapon banner works on its own, but they combine like oil and water. I would like to see some changes made there. Now, maybe arsenal tickets don't become a problem for long-term players. Maybe you can build up a stockpile of them over some months. Maybe for the full release, we'll get pull currency from so many different sources like Arknights does, so wasting some pulls isn't that big of a worry. But I can say that in this beta, the mixture of the 2 gacha systems feels a bit bad. It feels like you're wasting rolls unless you get so unlucky you need to hit guarantee. I think this needs to be addressed. But that and the story concerns I have for chapter 1 of the game are the only big criticisms I got. I do have nitpicks, but it'd take too long to explain them, and it's something that's just better saved to put into a feedback survey that they've sent out, because there's not too much discussion to be had for me saying like, oh, the pipes feel wonky to connect in third person mode. I do just think chapter 1 being weak early on the gacha systems are the only pressing concerns I have. The other ones would be how the game handles content drops and events, but that's for full release to see. We can't really judge how commonly you'll drop events now, because only in closed beta, right? I will say the system to bring back characters from Arknights has me side-eyeing it a little. Like, the lore implications behind it are interesting, but I worry if it does it too much, we'll start to have fatigue for that system, kind of like how alters are feeling in current Arknights. So I think it's fine bringing back Arknights characters, I just don't want to see it done too much because it'll get a little boring. Keep it special. Granted, I say this, but if they bring Exia Lemon or any of my favorites, I mean, yeah, I'm rolling frame 1, so I understand I'm probably not the best person for this message. And no, this one I had no natural way to segment in the video, so I'm gonna just say it here. The Syracusan, or descendants of Syracusans, I suppose, the characters speaking in Italian to each other in the English dub was goated as fuck. You can tell Hypergriff listened to the players loving operators in the English dub having accents that fit the real life counterpart of where they live, so they took this shit and brought it to Enfield. I really like that. I feel like sometimes the voice direction is a bit off and some lines don't feel the most natural in English, but I think the voice actors they got are really damn good, and the accents are just the cherry on top of that.
Sei intrufolata nella valle da sola. Landmin lo sa.
Though in its current state, what Enfield does well, it genuinely kills on. The factory, battle system, environments, character models, attention to detail, and exploration are absolute gas. Not to mention the game's so optimized it could run on pure dog shit specs. This is Hypergriff's first 3D gacha game, and they've delivered so far. Improvements need to be made, but that's what this beta is for, just like what all the others were for. And from playing the game, from its technical test to its first beta to now, they have not stopped improving on this game. I've been playing Arknights for 5 years straight. I have seen the level of quality Hypergriff puts into their games and how they keep innovating in the space. Like, you know how every gacha drops with a roguelike mode in it now? Yeah, guess who made that shit popular? Arknights with KOB's Fungus event back in August 2020, then later the full release of the Integrated Strategies mode as we know it. I have a lot of faith in the games they release, and I can't wait for the open beta because I think so many people are going to love this game.